This is cycle 1, week 18, experiment 142, updraft in Van Cleve's book. This experiment was, for me, difficult to get to work very well, and so I want to offer you some tips that I have found. The purpose of this experiment is to demonstrate the effect of heat on the movement of the air. So the science that we need to understand is that the heat source is heating the molecules of the air that are near to it. It's increasing their kinetic energy, and so they're moving. They're moving faster and they're moving further. They're moving away from the heat source. What that means is that's a localized effect. So the air near the heat source is moving away, but the whole room is really the system of the air. And so as in that localized system, as the air is getting hotter and it's moving away, colder air is then moving in to replace it. So really what we're setting up with our heat source is a convection cycle. So we're heating up the air so that it's increasing its temperature and its speed, and so it's moving away, and colder air is moving in, and then it's being warmed. It's moving in a pattern or in a cycle like that. That's the science of what's going on. And then we want to demonstrate that with a spiral piece of paper and show that that moving air is capable of turning the spiral piece of paper. That's the essence of the experiment. So in order to make this experiment work well, a couple of things that I've done. In the book, they recommend that you use a desk lamp as the heat source, and I believe that that will work with the right setup. I had a hard time getting it to work, so I chose or found that a candle is working well. I then went a little bit further and I put the candle inside this little mason jar. I did that for two reasons. First, it enables me to sort of collimate the hot air, so it's heating up the air here, and then it's coming out in a very focused way out of the jar. And then also it gives me a very safe way to allow the students to feel that the air is hotter over this candle. We can take our hand and put it right here and very clearly feel the heat that's moving. So those would be the two things that I did there. And then my final tip has to do with the spiral itself. In order for this experiment to work well, I have found we have to maintain the spiral shape. So as the spiral moves up, if we imagine it laying here, as it comes up, it moves in a spiral shape like that. If I have any kinks or change in the direction of that surface, then the paper will rotate, but it won't continuously rotate. In my experience, it will rotate partially, and then it sort of reverts and goes back. And so we have to be very careful with how we lift the paper. We'll see that maybe in just a second. So to introduce this experiment, I would say the purpose of our experiment today is to also talk about another property of fluids, and that property is that as the individual molecules of the fluid are being heated, they increase in their kinetic energy, and they begin to move away from that heat source. So as they're moving away from that heat source, then the colder molecules are moving back in, and we're creating a cycle, like a circle of the air molecules. In this case, our fluid is the air moving like that. We can practically see that air moving here in just a second, but first, come over and very safely, keep your hand about that far away, feel the heat from that candle. I would let the students do that. Then I would be very careful with how I pick up the paper so that I have one continuous surface is my goal. And I don't have one in this case. My surface starts here and it moves. It comes here. So it turns. It turns okay, but as the surface moves up here, it kinks and it bends backwards. So if I put it back down, I arrange it, and I lift it, and I try to maintain that shape and that curvature. Right there is my trouble spot, but that's much better. So that now it turns. It captures that convection current very well. Even my voice talking is enough to disturb that current, see? And so you have to be very careful with how you do it. This is definitely an experiment that I would practice at home, and I would definitely talk to your director about having open flame to make sure that that's acceptable. This is how I would do cycle 1, week 18, experiment 142.